impassioned and occasionally light-hearted speech, went away, forgot about it. It was posted on YouTube about 6 weeks later, and it just went viral. About 3 million people downloaded it in 48 hours. It became a huge subject of discussion in India. The Prime Minister, no less, had kind words to say about the speech and me. Even the usual right-wing trolls who go after me on social media suspended their hostility for a few hours to praise the speech. So suddenly my publishers called and said, you've got to make a book out of this. And I said, look, why bother? Doesn't everyone know this already? To which his answer, or publisher's answer, was, no, because if they did, your speech wouldn't have gone viral. So clearly you have opened people's eyes and you need to put this into a book. And that's essentially what I did, though obviously the level of research and insight that goes into a 10-minute, de facto 15 minutes, because the timekeeper wasn't looking at his watch, I think, speech is much less than the amount of research and reflection that has to go into a 330-page book. But at the end of it all, I'm pleased to say I have done the same thing as I did in the speech, which is not to give you a dry narrative history, but an impassioned argument about the British Empire in India. And to give you a very short summary, I spent the first half or so of the book describing how Britain came to what was one of the richest countries in the world at the time. 27% of global GDP was coming out of India in 1700. Even after 50 years of British rule, 1800, it was 23% of global GDP. So one of the richest countries in the world, which lots of travellers from Europe and America, and Arabia, had come to and written about, described a land of abundance and prosperity, no poverty, no significant poverty or landlessness. And this extraordinarily prosperous, rich country, which the East India Company initially came to trade with, but sensed an opportunity to actually conquer, was then reduced over 200 years of exploitation, loot and plunder to one of the poorest countries in the world by 1947. So the British came to this land and despoiled it, and that's essentially the argument I laid out in some detail. I then take up the various arguments that are made for the empire. And people tend to say, well, all right, they did bad things, but look at all the good they left behind, and the usual list of the railways, and rule of law, political unity, democracy, the game of cricket, which I love, even tea, not to mention the English language in which I'm addressing you today, that all of these we're told we should be grateful for. Except that, as I point out in some detail, every single one of these things was either brought in, but not one of them was brought in for the benefit of Indians, but they were either brought in for British benefit and profit, or in order to enhance British control of the country and no other purpose. And so, whatever benefits India has been able to reap from the existence of these things has been incidental and often has involved Indians seizing these British institutions and turning them around from the purposes for which they were originally intended into serving Indian interests. And then finally, the last sections of the book try and assess the impact of imperial rule in India and conclude with a look at the messy afterlife of colonialism, even beyond the British and India in today's world. So that's broadly what the book's all about. Obviously, there's a lot of detail one can go into, but I think you and I will be talking, then we're going to be answering questions of the audience, so I'll save the details for later. But very broadly, that's what the book is about. It was called An Era of Darkness, the British Empire in India, in its Indian avatar, but the British publishers decided that they wanted a slightly different title, and they're calling it Inglorious Empire, What the British Did to India. It sounds almost more blunt than my original title.